on? Anything? For the folks who've been in other sessions, you're like, we ran out of time. I wish I could have said this or asked that question or anything. Okay, cool. Then we will move forward. Just a show of hands. How many people were in a session that I did earlier today? Okay, good. I got a good group of folks who hadn't done some stuff. So I will do my best not to be redundant, but I do need to get some folks caught up with where I am. And so my name is Andre Cohen. I am the cultural coordinator for Anoka County. I know that sounds like Julie McCoy from The Love Boat, but that's not what I do. I'm in charge of the monitoring the affirmative action program, as well as educating staff on issues of diversity and the law and how they coalesce. And in my private life, I'm a consultant and do diversity work and that kind of stuff. So, so that's a little bit about who I am. I will tell you, in terms, if you're looking for lots of content and data analysis and just, really rich content, you're not going to find that here. So just mark me down as a 3 on your evaluation for that now. But what I will say is that part of my job is to encourage and spark conversations. I believe that the answers that we need are the answers that we have not discovered yet. And so I want to help create a conversation where we can discover the answers to those important questions that are in front of us. All right? So this particular session is Everyday 13s. It's also titled in your book the 1, the 2, the 6, and the something, the 13, the something. That was just to get you here. So I hope you were intrigued enough to say, oh, what is that? I'm going to go to that. But I want to talk about this ABC footage that I found, because I think it offers some really good tools and metaphors for us to think about how we interact with each other and ways in which we don't interact with each other. And then finally asking the question, why, as we try to move forward and do something new and different. Okay? So what would you do? In your handout, let me make sure. Oh, I didn't do that. I have another handout for you. Everyone has something to write on, is that correct? Okay, cool. If you could, take a card and pass it down. If you could take a card, pass it down and around, that would be great. If you could take a set of cards. If you can take a set of cards, that would be great. Take a set. You're welcome. Take a set of cards. And if you could take a set of cards, please. I'm going to go every other one because I think I have enough for those. And I have a whole nother set. Hello, how are you? Yeah. Did those extras make it back to the next row? Okay. Did those extras make it back to the next row? Sweet. You need one. Yeah. Take a set of cards. No. You just need one. So, greedy Smurf. Okay. Okay. Cool. There you go.
And then it came up 100%.
Yes.
Okay.
It's so funny. I have another one. Is everyone getting a card? Make sure you get it. You're welcome. There you go. You're welcome. Yeah, I'll bring it back to you. for you to do is you're going to do a quick self-assessment. And thank you so much. And with the self-assessment, on the front is obviously the blue that says, what did you learn growing up? And on the back is this chart. And on this category are your teachers, people who have taught you about the world in some way, right? They may have had a formal curriculum, or they may have had an informal curriculum, but these are some of the teachers who've taught you about these categories of people, all right? So I want you to tell me in this self-assessment, what did your parents teach you about African Americans? And there are 3 ways that I want you to choose to respond to each one of those categories. One is I'd like for you to put a plus when you've learned something positive about one of those groups. Okay? So if I learned something positive about African Americans, I put a plus in this box right here from my parents and family. If I've learned something negative from my friends, I put a minus there. If you've learned nothing, I want you to put a 0. All right? Now, you can have pluses and minuses in the same box, but the size of your plus and the size of your minus will dictate what it was that you learned. Okay? Is that clear? All right, so I'll give you about 5 minutes or so to do that. About another minute or so. Thank you for the tenacity. I know the cards are a little bit difficult. They're a little shinier than I thought they would be, but thank you for your tenacity in trying to do this activity. All right, stop right where you are. I know many of you haven't been able to finish. I would just say that that's homework. All right, so that's your assignment. So what I'm not interested in is what your pluses and minuses mean for you. I'm not interested in hearing what specifically you learned from parents and family. I'm not interested in that. That's actually none of my business. What I am interested, though, is in what came up for you as you were filling out this card. What came up for you? Any emotions? Any thoughts? What came up for folks? Okay, the realization that you lived a sheltered life and that you didn't learn as much as you should have. Okay. Yes.
My parents, I learned a lot of positive things, but then when I started thinking about other people in my family, that's when I added negative because it was just really cool to see that when I was thinking about my parents, they did teach me a lot about different people, different cultures, and to be very open and inclusive, but that some of the members of my family are not that way.
Okay. So when you thought about it, you thought about the good things that your parents taught you and how other family members kind of did not complement that learning. Okay, cool. Yes? Okay, so you just weren't exposed to a lot of different cultures and that kind of stuff. Yes? Okay, so you came to the realization about how those things can skew your relationships as an adult. Okay, cool. Yes?
Being kind of frustrated growing up in a small rural area and seeing other cultures and other colors and whatever you want to say, and yet not having them included.
Okay. So that you had some frustration growing up, seeing all these cultures, but not having them be a part of the community, if you will. Okay, cool. Yes?
Looking at this, I look back at how judgmental my parents were with a lot of these cultures.
Okay, so you look back at how judgmental your parents were with a lot of these cultures. Yes, ma'am, and then I'll take your hand, ma'am, in the yellow.
I noticed how much I have grown and how much the relationship
Okay, so you notice how much you as an individual have grown, as well as how the world has gotten better at large. Okay, yes, ma'am.
I noticed how the men were way more judgmental than the women.
Okay.
My male friends.
Okay, so your male friends were way much more judgmental than women. Okay, cool. Other folks. Yes, ma'am, and then I'll take your hand, ma'am.
I just realized that whenever I wrote kind of a negative, I got like angry at the thing that had taught me that negative.
Huh.
I was just like,
Okay, so when you had a negative, you started feeling anger towards the thing that taught you the negative. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
How many of them were positive and had positive and negative in all of them?
Okay, so how contradictory they were. She had positives and negatives in all of them. Yeah. Other folks. Yes.
media portrayal from as a middle-aged person from when I was a kid. So I'm talking to all of you.
Yeah, she said that she had pluses and minuses in all of the media category because she's seen how it's changed from since she was young to now. So she's seen that change. All right, cool. Other things? Yes.
I have a sense of wanting to, I haven't been exposed to a lot of things growing up, a lot of cultures, and I have a desire to change that, but I also have a sense of denial. Like, there was something in there, I really don't remember it. I just wanted to know that I'm
Okay.
Some sense of denial, because I think they have to be negative, but I can't.
Okay. So, but you own that, right? You own that sense of denial that.
It's very real.
Yeah. Other folks. I saw one more hand. Yes, ma'am.
I think I remember growing up being aware of stereotypes, and trying to remember, where I heard them, or, was it from my parents, or was it something I was watching on TV? But then all of the personal experience, all the family friends, or kids in school, all the personal experiences were positive when it was related to an individual person. But I have the negatives were related to rumors or just generalizations.
Yeah, I thought that was, as you're standing there, I'm getting this this epiphany that even for me, that a large part of my negatives were for groups, but my exceptions were my personal individual pluses. So I got these overarching negatives for these groups, but then there was always this exception. Right? And that's funny because, and I've told this story before, so please bear with me if you've heard it. But I live in Mounds View, and no, I'm going to save the story. I'm going to save it. Okay, stop. All right. So there are these overarching pieces. I'll use it, but I have to come back. So yeah, that was an epiphany for me. As you were saying that, I hadn't thought about that my exceptions were the individual relationships that I had oftentimes to these stereotypes. Now, how can I use that? How can I use that? The fact that I have these exceptions, I have these one pluses. I hear all this bad stuff about the group, but I got this one plus. How can I use that to change my life in ways that I want to change? It's a positive. And so, what's that? Get to know people. Start looking for the positives. I start multiplying that one plus that I have. Right? So I look at I've been taught about the group, and the group is like this, but I have this one friend. And it's so funny because, black people are so funny. Because they'll hear a white person say, well, I have one friend that is, right? And I don't know if a white person's ever experienced that, but sometimes it feels kind of like you've been condemned or, because you got that one black friend. But how do you start having more if you can't start with one? Right? And so, so we need to encourage folks, like I have one Muslim friend. And I'm going to keep hanging with that Muslim friend until I get 2 Muslim friends. Right? So we have to capitalize and build on that stuff. How many people have driven cars or ridden in a car? All right. Does that car have blind spots? Okay, where typically are they? Okay, so on the side, behind you. Where else? Up above you? Okay, cool. And if you drive a Hummer, the whole thing is a blind spot, right? Are those blind spots your fault?
Well, sometimes.
So I ask it like this. How many people were on the design team of the car that they drive? So it's not your fault. However, those blind spots are your what? Responsibility. All right? So it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility. The things that you learned or you didn't learn, what your parents did or didn't do, or what your community did or did not do, what you had exposure to or didn't have exposure to, is not your fault. But now as an adult and a person who can make their own decisions, it becomes your what? Responsibility. Okay? It becomes your responsibility. I'm really big on responsibility. All right? So, as we move through these conversations, it's important for us to look at things from a responsibility viewpoint. It's not my fault, but it is my responsibility. I didn't put the trash on the ground, but as a member of the community, if I want to have a nice community, it may as well start with me. All right? So I'm going to show a clip from an ABC special, What Would You Do? Many of you have seen this. Hopefully I can give some new revelation on what this could mean for us. And if not, you're enjoying the conversation. All right? So here we go. What ABC does, and I found this by accident because I was watching one of my favorite shows, which is Dancing with the Stars. I haven't been watching this season, but I watched the previous seasons. And when I found this particular one, it was the one where Priscilla Presley was on there. And I don't know if you know, some of you guys aren't old enough to know who Priscilla Presley is, but she was in Airplane and Elvis's wife and all this kind of stuff. And it was like really cool because, you know, she's like old cheese and fine wine. You know, she's aged with time. And she was doing all the kicks and the backflips and all that kind of stuff. And that was like really cool because she was like one of the white women you're supposed to love when you're a kid, right? Her and Farrah Fawcett and Jane Kennedy and no, that was a joke. It was Jane Kennedy's black. She's black. I know. All right, but so what's that? And so we have all that stuff going on, and but the thing about Priscilla in this particular episode or the series that time was that I was really surprised that not only could she do those kicks and all that kind of stuff, but her facial expressions never changed. She looked scared and surprised the whole time. I mean, that Botox will do it to you, won't it? You know. So I found this show, What Would You Do? And basically what ABC does is that they create these ethical dilemmas and they watch how people react to that. And so we're going to talk about some of those reactions after we watch the clip. So here we go.
Hello and welcome to the opening show of our primetime series, What Would You Do? If you see something and you think it's wrong, do you step in or do you step away? What people say and what they do aren't always the same. That's why our hidden cameras are so revealing. In our first scenario, we weren't sure what to expect when our opinionated man behind the counter meets the Muslim woman in a headscarf. Deep in the heart of Texas, at this little roadside bakery, bigotry is being served with a coffee of berries.
No, man. We don't serve Muslims here.
I'm sorry?
This is America. We're at war with your people.
I don't know what you think I am. Just trying to get an apple.
Well, you're a terrorist is what you are. So,
excuse me?
You gotta take your business elsewhere. We don't serve your kind.
The other customers at this bakery near Waco seem to hear everything, but they barely look at the Muslim woman, even when the language is tough to take.
Get back on the camel and go back wherever you came from.
Sir, I'm American. I was born and raised
No,
in
you're
this
not.
country.
Americans don't wear towels on their head.
Muslim Americans say these are words they hear all the time in all parts of the country. But here at the bakery, what the customers don't know is that this Muslim woman and the man behind the counter are actors. The bakery is working with us, all part of a primetime hidden camera experiment on prejudice and patriotism.
Please take your business elsewhere. Am I asking too much?
When no one even tries to help her, she makes a direct appeal.
Sir, would you mind ordering me an apple strudel? That's why I'm here. I can give you the money. I'm not comfortable.
Please no, sir. I'm not gonna let you have it.
But when he gives her the cold shoulder, she finally just leaves. You could have helped her out. You could have spoken up. Why not?
Mistake up for her? Well, if he tried to dig some horns or something, then I would have.
Well, why not try to set him straight?
I really think this person that owns his own business should be able to say food, they self-safe.
She's not American.
Others seem to agree with our actor as to who's an American and who's not. Is it all based on the way we look?
I'm an American citizen. I just would like an apple strudel.
Well, I'm sorry, then why don't you dress like an American? You're
This
so
is for
American.
religious purposes, sir, and I don't think you have any rights to say anything.
So I'm religious and I don't wear, Halloween costumes around. I mean, am I wrong here, sir?
Not me.
I run my business the way I want to run.
Right. No, let me cover that huge shirt on.
This customer is adamant that the man behind the counter is doing the right thing. But the fact is, it's against the law to deny service to someone based on their race or religion.
My name is John Quinones, and I'm with ABC News. What did you think of what you heard here?
I didn't hear anything racist.
He told her he wouldn't serve her.
Well, he can say he wouldn't serve you if you come in barefoot without a shirt on.
But she wasn't barefoot or without a shirt on.
Well, she wasn't dressed right.
What do you mean?
I'd run the place, I'd do the same thing.
You wouldn't let Muslims shop at your store?
I sure wouldn't.
We never expected customers to be so candid.
How do I know you don't have a bomb in there?
Watch what happens this time when, once again, our Muslim woman is denied service
This is not right.
and again leaves.
I mean, we reserve the right to not serve.
That's right. That's right. That's, I appreciate saying that. I think that's the first time I've ever seen that.
He not only commends the man behind the counter for his discriminatory behavior, but he gives him the thumbs up, not once, but twice,
Good job. All right.
as he leaves.
Can I talk this out for a second?
But when I approach,
So we're on ABC News.
there is no thumbs up for me.
Let's take a little experiment in there to see how people react to that kind of attitude. Yeah, I'm American.
That man took it a bit farther, telling me I'm not an American.
Who is threatened?
Jack DeVideo is a social psychologist at Yale University.
So when we as Americans feel threatened from the outside, we're going to define ourselves in very rigid fashions. Either you're with me, and if you're not really one of me, then you must be somebody else who's against me.
The young woman in our experiment is an actor. But for this woman, discrimination is all too real. Nahaya Javed helped us design our experiment. Although born in Chicago, she says she's constantly characterized by fellow Americans as the enemy.
You always start off with you're a terrorist, a samba lover, towel head, camel jockey, on and on.
Don't do it to me. Don't do it to me.
While attending college, she continually suffered verbal abuse and has even been physically attacked just because she's Muslim.
They assume I'm not from here, and if I tell them I'm American, they're like, no, you're not. Just because you were born here doesn't make you American. And I'm like, so what makes you American?
It's a daily battle.
And I don't feel like living in America, I should have to fight this battle.
Meanwhile, back at the bakery, our actor is at it again.
But how do I know you're not a terrorist? Terrorists look like you.
But this time the customers are sympathizing with the Muslim woman.
Right, I know, but can you blame me?
Yeah, I can't blame you, actually.
Why? What's the problem?
Get out of here.
Okay, sir. I'm a good American, all right? We're at war with these people. So is mine.
And he's not the only one who walks out in anger.
Excuse me? No, you're a bad American.
Time and again, people speak out with their pocketbooks. But look what happens when this man threatens to leave.
You're not a good American, sir.
I am a good American. My son just came back from serving in the Army for over a year in Iraq, and that has nothing to do with her.
I understand, and I hear what you're saying, but
I can't believe how you would be so discriminatory. I'm deeply offended by that.
I'm sorry to offend you, sir, but I've got to live with myself.
Seething, the man vows to fight back.
I will let people know this. I've stopped here every time I've come by this place, and I'll never stop here again. Why do folks get so upset? They're trying to do justice.
It's justice that binds us together. It's justice that makes us a society. Any threat for that kind of justice and fairness undermines the entire system.
No. Perhaps that's why more customers are outraged by our actors' hateful behavior than approve of it.
You're not dressed like an American.
But no one is more persistent than these two young women who can't believe what they're hearing.
Take the jihad, take it back out to the parking lot. I mean, I got to protect my customers, okay?
You're really offensive and disgusting.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to protect you.
Here's the thing.
How do you know? These obviously dressed like an American. And unlike the others, they don't just leave in anger. They stand their ground. They don't regulate what people wear. Yes, because I believe that the degree of John, can you for register news? It's only when we catch up with the heroines that they finally let their guards down.
I'm going to say right here, you know, my one had, yeah, I just seen, how people treat them differently. And earlier.
Just watching them stand up for what they believe in touches Professor Davidio.
In a way, they defended America. And I was impressed by that, because they wanted this to be a just society, a just place, a just thinker.
I'm Dr. Yarvis. And remember this man whose son served in Iraq? He's also moved to tears.
Every person deserves to be treated with respect and dignity, no matter their situation, no matter how they're dressed.
Never have we seen reactions so polarized, from a thumbs up for prejudice to an emphatic thumbs down. Two different Americans, both convinced they're patriotic. At the end of the day, 13 people stood up for the Muslim woman, while 6 sided with the Quran. But the majority of the bystanders, 22, did or said absolutely nothing. That's what's most frightening to Muslim Al-Nahaya, who was watching our experiment. In fact, so frightening that they often avoid going out by themselves.
It's really sad because I'm old enough to be able to do things by myself. I shouldn't need a chaperone all the time. But that one time that I'm alone and something bad might happen, I'd rather be safe than sorry.
It's no wonder this young woman was so moved by the people who came forward to protect a stranger who just happens to be Muslim.
It's so much bullshit. I wish more people would be testing and make my life a lot easier.
Thoughts, comments, observations? Yes. You thought it was interesting that the majority of the women the majority of the people who stood up were women. Okay.
I don't recall any woman being supportive of that belief.
Okay. Cool. Other folks, thoughts, comments, observations? Shocking. Okay. Sad. What's that? One more. Oh, you expected it. Okay. Other folks.
I don't know what the rest of the people were like that didn't do it, but I was proud of our youth. Those girls were great.
You were proud of the youth, those girls that were great? Okay. Cool.
My other thought is what defines an American, because my husband was just recently too, being that we're the third generation here, born and raised, we were just exposed to that. So she just said what defines an American.
So you've been here for 3 generations, you're the 3rd generation, and so what is it that actually defines an American? All right. Now, what I do want to tell you is that there's some conventions that they used in the production of this to lead you to a certain belief about individuals, particularly people in the South, right? Because they started out the segment with that music. That music. You know, which says what? What does that automatically say? Yep, hunky, stupid, redneck, you know, all those kind of, so they lead you down this path, right? Could that happen here? Yeah, right? More than likely it happens all the time, we just don't talk about it. Because we're nice. Right? So it's not just there. You know, there are videos and demonstrations that I can show you of stuff happening here. So it's not just Texas and it's not just the South that these kinds of things happen. It actually happens here as well. For many of you, I saw you had a puzzled look on your face. The subtitle was in Arabic. So those lines that you saw in the video, it was Arabic. So it was subtitled in Arabic. Other observations, other things that you saw or things that you thought about? Yes, ma'am.
I actually have seen that originally on TV, so this was my second time seeing it, and it provoked me to be very sad because, especially when one gal talked about the two gals that stood up, and she said, "This gal's my friend, you know, she's of a different origin." It reminded me of a time when I went into a restaurant with an African American lady friend, and we were waiting to be seated, and I watched 7 white couples come through, and I got so angry. I went up to the manager and I said, "Why are all them being seated and we are not?" Finally, I came to the table with some other people I knew who said, "We have an opening, you can seat them over here." And it just was a reminder to me of how it still prevails.
Okay, so it's a reminder of how it still prevails, and this was your second time seeing it. All right, cool. So another, yes, ma'am.
I found it interesting how the youth were more opted to speak up for different cultures, but more of the older generations were more accustomed to the back way tradition of denial, not accepting different cultures, and how they stood up for the cashier rather than the customer.
Okay. Yeah, and you said you were proud of our youth because they stood up and said all those things. I want to put this in context as well. Eden Prairie, basketball, and food stamps. Folks know what I'm talking about? Okay, so that was what, February 8th, was it? There was a game, and Eden Prairie was playing Hopkins, and the Eden Prairie players, kids, right, yelled, "Food stamps, food stamps, food stamps." And we all know that that has a negative connotation that's not a good thing. And to the Hopkins players who they were trying to say were on food stamps. So yes, we have come some ways with our youth, but we still have some other stuff to talk about as well, right? I'm going to take your hand, ma'am, and then I'll take yours, and then I'll take yours.
To bounce off of that idea, I moved from Minneapolis to a very, very small community about 8 years ago, and the one thing that was surprising to me in the second time seeing this was the one older gentleman who did come to and ended up in tears at the end because he came to the rescue of that. And so my point here is that sometimes things can be surprising.
Yeah.
When I moved to that small town, Laverne, I fully expected everybody to be very, very conservative, and once I got to start to know people, there were a lot more that were open-minded and like-minded like me than I ever expected.
My neighbor, okay, so I don't know what, how people feel about rednecks or whatever. My neighbor is a redneck. He's got a U.S. flag and then some other flag that I thought was a half Confederate flag, but he got it filled in and it's different than it was before, right? He's got that. He's bald head. He's a laborer. He's got a real redneck. Because he's a laborer. That's why I can say he's a redneck, because his neck is red. And just as backward, every other word is a curse word coming out of his mouth, and he's like, "Oh, and every time he curses, because I don't curse, I just smile, right? I love that dude. I mean, it's just so crazy. It's as opposite as we are and as backwards as I might think that he is. There are things that he knows about housing and construction that I'm like, "Hey man, I need to do that. Oh man, this is just how you do it." Boom, boom, boom. And I'm able to draw off of that. So yeah, we have to constantly be surprised, right? People can surprise us. All right, so I saw a hand right here, and then your hand, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I just, while doing the part, realized, when I was a child, be at my grandma's house, and my grandma would say, the darkies walked through my yard, the darkies keep walking through my yard, and I felt that was wrong.
Okay. All right. So we'll talk about that because you said you feel like you'd be one of those people who walked out and didn't say anything. But there's some reasons why you don't do that, and we'll talk about that too. All right? Yes, ma'am. Okay. Okay. Yeah, you can see yourself not knowing what to do, and you can see some fear as well. All right? Any other comments? Yes. Yep. But the thing that makes me more excited is that the boy stood up and said something. That even though in the face of these injustices, there are still individuals who are able to figure out, even if they're not the most articulate, like that guy, F you, not the most sophisticated or articulate, but can rise up and actually take action on their beliefs. And so, so we'll talk about that other stuff later. All right. I did see a couple more hands. Yes, sir, and then I'll take you, ma'am. Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Well, one of the saddest things to me, my math skills are not great. I'm a social worker, but if my calculations are right, only 13 people out of 41 did it. And to me, it's just as sad that there were 22 didn't do anything and let it go by and myself having myself seen. So to me, that seems that only 13 out of 41 people really do anything about others.
And have confidence in your math skills, okay? Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I'm just going to say that I think that a really important thing for us to do, especially as social workers, community service, whatever, is that it's really easy to either get sad or angry at the people who either encourage the negative behavior or didn't say anything. And I think that's kind of my primary reaction as well. First, just being really angry and sad. But I think something that we have to do
Yeah.
We'll figure out how we can change that rather than cutting off the dialogue right away.
It is so important to use the range and the spectrum of emotions that we have. You know, getting mad and sad, that's one end of the spectrum, but there are other things that we can do, like having compassion, as you spoke about, right? I want to talk a little bit, and I want to use those groups as a metaphor for talking about how we deal with those situations as they come up for us. All right? So I want to talk first about the negative sixes. These were the people who were trying to deny this woman apple strudel. She wanted some apple strudel, and they were saying that she shouldn't have any, right? So the negative sixes. What do we typically call those folks that are those negative sixes? We usually call them racists, or we call them bigots, right? And when we call them that, do they go, "Thank you so much"? All right? I mean, when you tell someone that they're overweight, do they just, you know, are they just like, "You know what, thank you, I really appreciated that. I needed that"? No, they don't say that, right? You tell somebody that they're not attractive, they don't go, "No, I can deal with that," right? That's not what happens. Yes, ma'am. I didn't say that. Yeah, that's not what I said. I haven't made any correlation between the scorecard and what we're talking about now. Yeah, nope. I haven't made any correlation. Yeah, do you know where this number came from? Oh, okay. So, let me back up. So in the store, in the scene that we just saw, there were 6 people who were negative 6, that were the folks we might call bigoted or racist. Okay? So, and then we'll get to the 13 in just a second. I'm not making any correlation to the card. So those of you, I'm not saying that you're one of these if you have some negatives. But after we talk about this, you can decide for yourself where you are, right? So there's negative sixes. The biggest, we call them bigots or racists. One of the things that happens is that when we do that, we separate those people from us. They become separate from us, right? Because first of all, who wants to be around people who are going to call them names, right? So first of all, they get disconnected from our human family. And it's really funny. There's the story about the wolves and them going out and what happens when an injured wolf is in a pack. What does he decide for the safety of the rest of the pack? Right? He decides to leave so he can die. Right? And that's what typically happens when we have that relative or that coworker or that person that we say, this person is just totally too inappropriate for me. I can't take it. I'm going to cut myself off from them. Well, we leave them now to a life of death, and death through bigotry, right? Death through racism. But I have to say, I love the negative sixes. I love these cats. And I love them because I'm a teacher. That's what I do. And so when I say a kid with a skinhead and big black boots and chains and swastikas and piercings and all this kind of stuff, what do I know about this kid? I might want to cross the street. It's one of the things I know. But what I know from being a teacher is I know that he was not born that way. That somehow he got into his head that this is a way that I can operate in the world and get the things that I need. That's what I know about him. And so when I see these racist individuals, I get excited. And why do I get excited? Because they've learned how to be racist, which means what? They can learn something else. So here's the story I was going to tell earlier. So I live in Mounds View, and I decided to go get an early lunch because it's a Saturday. I'm doing a bunch of errands, and so I go to this restaurant. I hop in, sit next to the bar, order my stuff, get the thing, and when I walk in, I notice that there's a dude at the end of the bar who is red-faced and just drunk. And it's like 11:30 in the morning, you know? And he's just like gone. So I know a few things. I know that the bartenders and folks know him because he couldn't get this drunk, and he must come here very often because he couldn't get this drunk. Right? So, you know, I just kind of block him out. I see him in my peripheral, but I just kind of block him out. And so I fill up my menu, give it to the bar staff, and then I notice that the dude has moved from the end of the bar right next to me. So I don't know how you interact with drunk people, but I'm not afraid to fight because I can get down. But they're so unpredictable, so I never know what to do, so they just make me uneasy. So we do what we Minnesotans do, and we started our small talk. And, you know, what guys start talking about is sports. So we talked about the Vikings, and, you know, Vikings this, and so I faked my way through that conversation. And so then he breaks into the thesis of why he came and sat next to me. And he leans over to me and he says, you know what? I don't like niggers. That's what I said. And I was like, okay, you know, how do I deal with this, right? So I say, how about those Vikings? And we go back to talking about sports. But something in my spirit said, go back to that. So I go back to that and I say, when you use that word, what do you mean by that? And he says, you know, I mean, uneducated, ignorant, same thing, right? Uncool, you know, ghetto, sloppy, lazy, blah, 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 blah. So he goes and gives me this whole list of stuff. And so I look at him and I say, well, do you know any white people who fit those descriptions? And he looks at me and he says, yeah. Oh, how about those twins? I say, how about those twins? So we start talking about the twins and that kind of stuff, and the conversation goes on a little longer, and by this time they've brought me my food. And so he looks over at me again and he says, you know what? I don't like niggers, but I like you. I'm not sure what to do with that either, because either am I or am I not? You know, is this, you know, whatever. So it's this crazy compliment. And so I say, well, what is it about me that you like? And he says, he was like, you know, you're easy to talk to, you're really educated, you know, and he gives me all this list of positives. And I look at him and I say, well, what if all the people that you call that word and all the people that you think who look like me are idiots? All the people that you met that you think look like me, that you call that word, are idiots. And everybody else that you haven't met is just like me. And he looks at me and he says, I got to pee. So he gets up and he goes to the bathroom. So by this time, I'm done with my meal. I'm paying for my check. I'm ready to go. So I'm walking out the door, and guess who meets me at the door? It's my new friend, right? But it's a little bit different. His hair is kind of combed over to the side. There are water driplets on his face, and he has this damp napkin. And he reaches out to me and he says, look, I have chickens and I get fresh eggs. If you ever need eggs, give me a call. So what do? I take his napkin, I go my way, he goes his way. Do I call him? No, I didn't call him. But for this -6, what occurred? What happened? Well, let me back up. Would I have been within my right, socially, maybe not legally, but socially, would I have been within my right to give this dude a piece of my mind? Would I have been within my right? Yes. And what would that have done? It would have solidified everything that he thought about people who he thinks look like me. Sometimes, and I want to be real clear, I'm not asking you to do what I do. I'm not asking you to sacrifice what I sacrifice. I'm not asking you to take the kind of punishment that God designed me to take. All right? But what I am suggesting is, oftentimes, we have the need to be right so much that we miss the opportunity to do the right thing. Sometimes these -6s want some kind of excuse to get out of their flight pattern. And maybe we can do that. Maybe we can be that teachable moment for them. All right? Because they weren't born this way. It's something that they learned. I want to talk about the 13s, and then I want to get to those guys. The thing that I like about the 13s, we get along. Me and 13s, we get along. The 13s are the number of people who actually stood up and said something in the bakery. Right? What we found with the 13s is that they have courage. And what is courage? If I were king of the forest. Right? What's courage? Confidence. What else?
Knowledge.
What's that? Knowledge is courage. What's that? Bravery is knowledge. Is courage. All right? Willingness to do something even though you are afraid. What is at the core of courage? What must you first have before you can have courage? Fear. Before you can have courage, you must have fear. And it's so funny because I talk to kids about this, and they're like, courage is not having fear. No, that's being a maniac. If you're not afraid of something, you're crazy, right? So to have courage, you must have fear first. And then you take that fear and with practice and with resources and with other folks, you take that fear and you move forward in spite of that fear. That's courage. I heard a quote the other day that I thought was really good, that anybody can box until you get hit. Right? So courage is taking bravery and practicing and gathering all your resources and doing it anyway. Any folks served in the armed services? You know about bravery, right? Doing things, having courage, doing things because you have the right training, you've practiced, and you have the right materials, and you do it anyway. Yes, ma'am.
I just have a question because you said it's usually based in or you have to have fear. I guess I challenge that a little bit because I have spoken up, and I just do it. I don't think about it. That's why I have a fear of speaking up when something's not right. So what is that? I don't think of myself as being courageous. It's just like.
When her question was, she's done things and not been fearful. When I talk about fear, and I don't have time to go, I don't have time to go into all of what fear is, but a part of fear is the respect to do it. So I'm not just talking about the terror of fear, but also the fear of being. That goes into some other places that I'm not willing to go right now. But that concept of fear has a double meaning. All right. And the 13s were connected. One of the things that I noticed was that there were either physical other people with them, or they were emotionally tied to someone else. Right? They had some kind of connection. My best friend is, my son fought for, my so-and-so is. So the 13s know that they're connected. And they also look and find allies. They typically don't go off by themselves. And an ally is a friend that will have your back even in your absence. That's an ally. Right? So let's keep moving. So let's talk about these 22. So I think it's really interesting what we do to martyrs. What we do to martyrs. We have martyrs in our society. And Dr. King is one of those martyrs. And people always go to, they talk about the Dr. King that was the loving lamb. Right? And I imagine like in 100 years, there'll be like the third book of King, in the Bible. He'll be canonized and, also, and he's not even Catholic, Can non-Catholics be saint? No? Okay. Yeah, well, hey, I was shooting for me, actually. No, but the 22 are fearful. And so where the 13 use fear, the 22 are stopped by it. But not for the reason that we typically think. And we'll explore that. The 22 are also what we end up calling the silent majority. I don't know if anybody is old, some of you are old enough to remember a president by the name of Richard Nixon. Okay? He's the president that looked like a potato. I am not a crook. Right? So Richard Nixon coined this phrase called the silent majority. And the silent majority was those group of people who agree with what I agree with, but don't say anything about it. Right? And so their silence must mean they agree with me. Sometimes we call it Minnesota nice, which I call passive aggressive, but that's a whole nother training too. But the silent majority is really interesting because the 22s believe within themselves that if I don't say anything, that's okay. But I'm on the board of Alexandra House, which is a battered women's shelter in Blaine. And so we have this way that we talk on the board. Anyone on a board or been a part of some kind of civic organization or that uses Robert's Rules of Order, right? So in Robert's Rules of Order, they talk funny, and part of it I think is to keep certain people out, but that's a whole other conversation too. So in Robert's Rules of Order, when they're going to make a decision, the chair of the board says, I am going to call the question. That means that they're going to make the decision. And they want to know how you're going to vote on this, right? And so there are 4 ways in which you can respond to the question. The first way is if you agree or you like it, you think it's the best thing you've ever heard in your life, you say what? I. You say, yay, I agree. That's what you say. If you think this idea is the dumbest thing you've ever heard in your life, and you have no part of it, what do you say? Nay. You say nay. No, I don't agree. Now, if you have some kind of conflict of interest or conflict of conscience, and you can't be a part of any of this stuff, what do you say to the secretary? You say, Madam Secretary, Sir Secretary, please write in the minutes that I abstain. I can't be a part of this. Write it down. What's the 4th way, using Robert's Rules of Order, that you are able to make a decision in a group? You say nothing. And when you say nothing, what does that say to the group? You've had a chance to say, yes, I agree. You've had a chance to say, no, I don't agree. You've had a chance to say, please strike me from the record on this. So what does it say to the group? It says, whatever we decide, you're down with. Whatever you decide as a group, I'll support. A lot of times, and I don't know how many folks work with teens because, sometimes teens their logic just gets twisted, right? I had a student who, I tried to keep under my wing as much as possible, and she gets pregnant. And I asked her, I said, how did you get pregnant? And she was like, well, first, and I was like, no, I don't need to know that. I'm like, why are you pregnant? And she told me that one of the dumbest things, and I slapped her up, just gave her a little love tap. She said, well, we decided not to use contraceptives. Because we just thought, it was just not a decision. We just didn't make a decision. And I was like, dummy, not making a decision is making a decision, right? So we're going to talk a little bit more about these 22 and what we can do. One of the things that's important is to understand how you see the world and how important that is. All right? So on your handout, if you can go to We only have a little bit of time left, right? We've got about 20 minutes, is that right? Cool. Is this helpful? Yes. Okay, cool, cool, cool. So there's a blue circle there, and what I'd like for you to do is to, some of us have done this exercise before, so just roll with me. But what I'd like for you to do, in that circle, that is the circle of all human knowledge. Okay, that's pretty melodramatic. Let's say that's the pie of all human knowledge. What I'd like for you to do is to cut yourself a piece of pie the size of what you know of everything that there is to know. All right? So cut yourself a piece of pie the size of what you know of everything there is to know. Okay? All right, so what kinds of things are in that piece of pie? What are some things that you know that you know?
My name.
You know your name. Please raise your hand if you know your name. All right, cool. One more thing. Yes. Oh, she was like, one more thing that you know, you know. Your beliefs and values, all right? So you know your beliefs and values. So now what I'd like for you to do is to cut yourself a piece of pie. Now, you're gonna cut 3 pieces. So this is piece 2, all right? But I want you to cut yourself a piece of pie relative to the size of what you know you do not know, of everything that there is to know, okay? So, for example, I know that I do not know Mandarin Chinese. I know that I don't know that. I know that I don't know how to do brain surgery. I know that I don't know that, all right? So I want you to cut that second piece of pie, and then I'll tell you what the third is, all right? All right, so what kinds of things are in that second piece? What are things that you are aware of that you do not know? How what? How to change a tire. You know you don't know how to change a tire. All right? One more. Can't do a cartwheel. You know you can't do a cartwheel. All right? So those are things that you know you do not know. And what do you think is left? What's the last part of the third piece of the pie? That's right. What you don't know, you don't know. And I did this in one workshop, and someone said, you got that from Donald Rumsfeld. And I said, you can use it for good or for evil. You decide. Okay? So the third piece is what you know you don't know. Is what you don't know, or we'll call that a blind spot. If we put that whole piece of pie, so the first piece is what you know, the second piece is what you know you don't know, and the third piece is your blind spot, or what you don't know you don't know. All right? My blind spot is something that I don't know exists. For example, one of the things, I consider myself to be an advocate for for women's rights and that kind of stuff. And one of my friends pointed out to me in the conversation how I was being sexist. I wasn't aware that I was being sexist, but they were able to point that out to me. So now I know when I say certain words or phrases that I'm now, so it's moved out of my blind spot and into my general knowledge. All right? Do other people have blind spots? First of all, if you have a blind spot, how do you find out about it if you don't know? Right? If you think about blind spots in terms of your car, how do you find out about a blind spot? What are the 2 ways you can find out about a blind spot? One is have an accident, and the second is that you look for your blind spot. So when we talk about our personal paradigm, we can have an accident like I did with the gender issue and get information, or we can try and look for that. Yes, ma'am.
I guess that was my question, because I think it's hard to quantify what you don't know if you don't know. And so that was kind of my challenge. It's like, how would I know how big that piece would be? And when it's brought to my attention at some point, it's going to go into one of those other
That's right. But I will only go into those other. Her comment was, "How do I know what I know I don't know? How do I quantify that? And once I'm aware of it, does it move into another piece of pie?" And the answer is yes, it does. Right? Yeah. So there's that. Yes, sir.
Oh, I was just going to use an example of like when I first moved to the cities.
Okay, go ahead. Use that example.
Okay, so when I first moved to the cities to be a social worker, I did not know about all the different African cultures. And Somali, I know is a big one, but where I come from, nobody has heard of that culture, so I didn't know anything about it. And then I learned about Oromo as I was researching about the Somali culture, or Oromo. So I guess in a way, like I didn't know there were all the
Okay. So he used the example of knowing about cultures in the cities. That when he was other places, he didn't know about them. But once he was in the cities, he found out about them. And then he was able to find out even more about those subgroups and those cultures the longer he stayed here. All right? So your paradigm is important. And it's the way you see the world. And the way you see the world is extremely valuable. So if you want to be that 22, now, I want to say that, and I'll be transparent, there are issues and times when I'm a 22. Sometimes it's not safe to speak up, and you got to use wisdom, right? But for me, I would feel sickness in my stomach if that's a place where I lived. One of the things Dr. King was, they try to paint him as this lamb, but they forget that he got really angry and ticked off. And he got angry and ticked off when he was sitting in a place called Birmingham, and he wrote this letter that's referred to as the letter from a Birmingham jail. And in this letter, one of the things that he is the most upset about is the fact that he is a Christian. And that his Christian brothers and sisters told him, "Martin, we will either do nothing or we will ask you to slow down on what you're doing." They were being 22s. And Martin's like, "I'm putting my butt on the line here and you guys aren't moving, so what's going on?" Right? So the 22s are in a really sticky situation. So I'm going to give you some tools on how you can move out of that 22 spot when you find yourself there. All right? So let's flip to the back of your handout. When we get disconnected from the human family, it becomes a lot easier to see the other as not being human, as not being one of us. Right? We talked in some of our earlier sessions about how much more we're alike than we're different, how there's one race, the human race, and it sounds really hokey to say it out loud, but it's so true. Right? So if you want to be one of these 22s, you have to work at it. You have to practice it. And it was really funny. I was talking with someone, and he was like, "Well, I don't speak up every time something happens." I said, "Well, do you think about it at least?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "That's the beginning." Because those -6s, they typically don't think about it. They don't have any problems being who they are. So if your first step is to go, "Ooh, that didn't feel right," stick with that. Learn from that. So then the next time that happens, you go, "Ooh, that didn't feel right," and I'm going to say something. And then the next time you'll go, "Oh, that didn't feel right. I'm going to say something. Now I'm going to do something." It's a gradual process, and the more you do it. And there was a question earlier, and someone said, "Well, I'm a black female, and I'm tired of always educating white people about stuff." And I said, "Well, that's interesting, because if you don't, who will?" At the same time, white people have to get to a place where you do your own homework. Right? It's funny. When I was teaching high school, the we had gotten to, at Skills for Tomorrow, which was in the Midway area of St. Paul, we got to a place where we figured that if we separated the boys and the girls for their core classes, like math and science, that we can get some, some better grades. And actually it turned out to be true. And so, but we combined them for other classes. And one of my classes was leadership. I taught leadership, and we were working on this unit on gender equity. Right, and so we're talking about all this stuff, and one of the, so I have the girls in my class and the boys in my class, and they weren't used to being together, so this was like a treat kind of thing. And so one of the boys stands up and he says, when I look at a girl, I look at what's on the inside. And what do you think the girl said? Oh, and the boys are like, oh man, what's going on? You gonna get some numbers tonight, And so the girls go off to their class, and I'm standing there and I'm writing on the whiteboard, the reflection questions and all this kind of stuff. We got about 15 minutes left in the class, and as the girls are leaving, I hear the same voice say, man, did you see Keisha's booty? And then I go, I just wasted 45 minutes. But then it hit me that this was the opportunity, this was the teachable moment that I've been setting up 45 minutes for. Because now it's me and these boys that we can start talking about the real issues that as men we can do to make women's lives better. And then I started thinking, I was like, wow, what if white people got together with other white people to talk about how they can make other people's lives better? And what if black people could talk with other black people about how we can make white people's lives better? And what if Hmong people got with other Hmong people and talked about how they could make Hispanics' lives better? And then I started thinking, we've been doing a lot of these diversity trainings, and we actually need to be doing training with our own group. We need to do some healing. And the reason I get to this is because you can fight battles for me that I will never know exist. I'm in the grocery store. There's a woman in front of me, and there's a woman in front of her. And the woman in front of her, I think she's Hispanic because it sounds like Spanish is her predominant language. Right? So she's there, she's got a cart full of groceries, she's got the kids, she's got 5 kids, she's in the candy aisle. So she's trying to put the groceries in there, the kids are trying to get the candy, she's trying to monitor the kids, all this stuff is happening, and the woman in front of me is acting what my grandmother would call ugly. And she's doing this. Right? And I'm thinking, I'm like, this is a diversity moment. I know exactly what to do. I've got my handouts in the car. I've got my PowerPoint presentation. We can make this happen now, right? And then it kicked in. My teacher training kicked in. What my students taught me kicked in. And I stood there, and I just did this. What happened to that woman's behavior? It stopped. It stopped. Because one of the things, as much as we want to be America's most top model or idol, whatever, nobody wants to be watched. I reconnected her with the rest of the human family. One of the things that I would encourage you to do is to use the back of this as a map or a plan for yourself to become stronger in those situations. Typically, when we encounter those situations where we don't know what to do, it's because we haven't practiced. We haven't thought about it. I'm doing a documentary right now on what it means to be white. And I keep asking white people, what do you like about being white? And they keep coming up with the same answer. I don't know. That's sad. As much as I'm proud to be black, I want you to be able to say, I'm proud to be white. Not in that crazy, twisted, nasty way, but in a way that is self-affirming and the affirming of others. Because part of the other thing that's happened is we've all forgotten our immigrant stories. Everybody came from somewhere. Right? So back in here, what I offer you is that you need to learn your immigration story. Research your family stories. Find names for family photos. Visit family homesteads and tell your family story. And why is it so important for you to do that for you? Because when you hear other people's stories, you will be more tolerant, and you will also say, that's like my story. And it's funny because our new immigrants, we're such a microwave society, we want them to get this stuff now. But our great-grandparents didn't get it now. Right? These new immigrants are only 4 generations behind you. Let them catch up. Right? And I know I'm preaching to the choir, but I'm hoping that the choir sings in other cathedrals than this one. The most power that we have is around the people that that are around us. We will get no more power than the people who are around us. Your closed mouth, your being a 22, is keeping somebody else in bondage. When you step up, you will be surprised at the number of other people who are willing to step up. But you can only step up if you have practiced, if you have the right materials. So let's go to the second part. Looking at information. Watch documentaries, listen to world radio stations, read magazines, attend workshops, contact organizations, and get firsthand knowledge. People balk at the fact that sometimes people say, well, I went to an Ethiopian restaurant. That's good. That's a good first start. Right? Oh, I love Mexican. Don't eat Taco Bell. Because I only have 42% beef. It's supposed to be 43% beef. And here are the 8 things you should remember. Assume nothing. If you don't know something, don't assume it. Ask the question. Make your feelings known. Please help me. I don't understand that. Can you work with me on this? Be vulnerable. Develop friendships. Be open about differences. We know we're different. So there's no need in trying to pretend that we're not. Lastly, know that mistakes happen. No one person is a spokesperson for all, so don't talk to your Hmong friend and say, well, what's the Hmong opinion on this, right? Know that ethnic and sexist jokes are not funny. It doesn't matter how you tell it. And I told a group earlier that if somebody asks you if they can tell a joke, your answer is no, because it's inappropriate, okay? Because otherwise they would just tell the joke. Right? Can I tell you this joke? No, I don't want to hear that. Right? And here are some things for walking it out. Be ready. So practice. Think about these types of situations. Identify individuals' behavior. Talk about the behavior and not the person. Right? Appeal to principles, set goals and limits for yourself. I'll only go this far with you, and then you're on your own, or this is how much I can take, and then I got to take a break, and then we can come back and talk about this later. Find and be an ally, and also be vigilant and persistent. Look for opportunities to stretch your muscles, your diversity muscles, if you will. All right? My name is Andre Cohen. I hope I gave you one thing that you can use. Have a great day.
Very nice, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
When you compare the -6 and the 13, really in some ways they're not that much different.
They're not. And part of the problem is that we try to say that they're that much different.
Well, even in here, the atmosphere at first, everybody was against some -6. Really, the -6 stood up for what they believed and what they were brought up to believe.
Yep.
So,
And so
they're condemning them, but really for condemning them, they're no better.
Well, I think the only difference is that we have to show the -6s. They have to recognize that how their behavior, if we want change, how their behavior is no longer effective.
And that one gal said that, compassion, or letting them know.
Yep.
But to come against them and say, you're deadly wrong, that's ridiculous, how most of the audience, you could hear that, they're really no better.
I think what was interesting is watch the video. It was the second time I watched it. The body language of all the individuals. You watch the body language of the -6 when they were confronted, especially they were very, their shoulders were away from the individuals, but the people who were the 13 were very, their chests were towards the people they were talking to. So they were standing up for the rights, but there was that sense of there was something that when they were confronted about, that it was almost like, well, I got caught doing something, kind of that hand in the cookie jar, that the body language is what that kind of told me in the 22 were completely closed down to the whole reality of life.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought that the body language of those individuals is what I kind of read was interesting.
Yeah.
That whole thing ties back into this.
Mm-hmm. I didn't want to bring it back to that, but I was hoping that intelligent people could.
Yeah. It's no different.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So thank you so much.
I'm from Anoka County, so I wanted to.
Oh, sweet. Where are you, Nate?
Adult mental health.
Oh, okay. Cool, cool. We've not met before, huh?
No, I'm brand new.
Okay.
This is like 9 months in, so.
Okay. Cool. I was like, I haven't met you. Okay.
No, so I figured I'd introduce myself. There's only a handful of us up here, so.
Yeah, I was surprised. I was actually looking to see more people, but I guess budget, stuff like that.
Oh, yeah. I know I was here in your first class, and then I was with a bunch of people from Anoka County.
Okay.
So there's a handful of us here, and we've been coming in and out, but.
Cool. Well, I appreciate you being here.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
That was fantastic. I was wondering
Good.
if you had a card, or because I'm kind of on the run and I
Yeah.
show
No,
you. Is this your card?
Yep.
So I'm knocking over. That's funny.
Yeah, it's okay.
So
this is my daughter, and it was an affirming experience to listen to you talk about family and the experiences with a bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh with me. It was really
good. Yeah, and this was a little bit different than what we did, but yeah, but
thank you so much.
You're so very welcome.
You're so good. You're so good at what you do. I'm really
thank
glad
you.
that you're here for that.
Thank you so much.
Awesome presentation.
Good.
Can I run a scenario by you and see
yes,
how
please.
you would handle it?
Yeah.
I didn't want to take up time in class. Talked about speaking up. I was going into my building where I work, and a mother had probably a 15-month-old toddler behind, and the baby was crying, and the mother was walking, about this far ahead, obviously completely at her wit's end with this child, neglecting the child instead of comforting it, So then we're waiting for the elevator, and the mom's just sitting there letting the child cry, obviously in distress. Get on the elevator, and it's just the two of us and then the baby. The baby's not getting on, so the mom's screaming at the baby, "Get up!" The baby doesn't even speak English. And get on. And I'm thinking, are we just going to sit here and wait until this child minds you? I guess that's what she was trying to. Or are you going to go get your child? And so finally, just out of complete frustration and anger, she yanks the child onto the elevator, and then the whole ride up, she's berating the child and screaming at the child, and I couldn't believe that she would behave in this way in front of a stranger. And then we get to the floor she's going to get off on. I'm up on the 7th, she gets off on the 5th. And then she walks out and is just going to leave this child on the elevator, and then turns around and the baby's just standing there crying. Again, a toddler just learning how to walk, screaming and berating the child. And then finally, the elevator doors are ready to close. I've got to hold it open. She won't come into the elevator to get the child. And then finally, again, she comes into the elevator and yanks the child by its arm very violently, and then goes off to do her business. So throughout the whole time, I'm thinking, I've got to speak up. You know, this woman is completely, if it's not child abuse, it's borderline.
Yep.
But then again, there was a part of me, this woman appeared to be only have one nerve left, and it probably all it would have taken was for me to speak out, and she would have lost it, because she was already losing it, you know. So how would you have handled that
in those situations, what I do, because what I know, particularly in abusive situations like that, you never, it sounds bad, but you do not engage the abuser.
So you don't intervene.
No, you support the abused. So what I would have done, because I've done this a few times, like being out at Target or places, and the same kind of scenario, is I go over to the kid and I say, it's really important to listen to mommy.
You don't think the mom would have immediately said, hey, butt out, this is none of your business?
I don't, that hasn't happened to me.
Would she have been so taken aback that I intervened?
I think that would have been her. I believe that it would have shaken her out of her stuff, snapped her out of her stuff, and then what it would have done was kicked her back into parent mode, which is I need to get my kid, because she's treating the kid like it's a peer.
Or
worse. Yes, as opposed to a child, and so that's a thing that I do. I appeal to the child, because if I embarrass or berate the parent, the child is going to suffer. So they're already getting abused. If I give the abuser more fuel, the victim is just going to get more punishment.
Do you think a 15-month-old baby would pick up on that?
Would pick up on what?
I mean, me even addressing
But it's not for the baby.
Oh.
It's actually for her. But you're addressing the child to get her attention. So you go down and you say, you know, it's really important to work with mommy. It looks like, you know, mommy's trying to get some stuff done. No more than that.
Rather than be judgmental towards
Yeah.
Well, that was the last thing I would have thought.
Yeah, because you're not really talking to the child, you're really talking to the parent. But you use the child to talk to the parent, to save face.
And that way save face. Excellent.
You dropped a card.
Oh,
I
thanks.
don't know if I got any good ones.
Oh, it's all
terrible
good. It's all good.
at taking pictures, but I
Thank
think your head is in each one.
Okay, good. Thank you.
It's a bonus.
Thank you. I'll know who it is.
Thank you again.
You're so welcome.
Quick question
Yes,
for you.
ma'am.
What would you recommend where to start when I have already messed it up good and confronted husbands, relatives who exhibited conversations and dialogue that were putting down, I work with refugees and immigrants, and that's a no-no. So for the last 3 years, my husband and I and my family separated ourselves from her. So I'm attempting to reconcile this thing, but I want to practice, and I don't know what's a good starting point.
I'd break them down into small units, and have them come over as small units. So don't bring everybody over to your house at once. Grab them one at a time. You know, have family time. You know, don't talk about the heavy stuff at first, but at some point stick that in and be like, you know, that really bothers me, because what if someone said that about us in this way or that way? Or, I mean, really engage in that conversation, but don't take them on as a whole group. Take bits and pieces.
All right, thank you.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome.
Yeah, man, I'm back.
Good, man. Thank you.
I just wanted to ask you maybe if you'll be interested in being a part of my thesis. I'm looking for interviewing black men on black males, pretty much role in the community, what black male leadership is, things like that. I'm doing interviews in the month of April, so it's coming up pretty quick. Do you have a business card or something?
Yes, sir.
Maybe I can contact you, give you a little bit more information so you know what's going on.
Yeah, and you can just go to my website and stuff.
Yep, and I checked out your website earlier.
Okay, sweet.
It's pretty good stuff, man.
Oh,
I like the
good,
mobile.
man. Oh, yeah.
Mobile website going on. A lot of people ain't on that yet.
Yep. I'm trying to you know,
expand
and be everywhere. I meant to tell people to put me on their Facebook or Twitter, but I think the people who would have will anyway.
Yep.
You know.
All right. Well, I'll check you out, and I'll email you sometime this week, give you some more information.
Yes, sir.
So
Thank you so much, man. Good to meet you as well.